Today, I released my latest quilt pattern. It's called Lemonade Twist. It consists of two different blocks. This one here that is known as the Lemon Star, the Lemoyne Star, it has a few different names. And then the other block is a simple patchwork block. And in the pattern, I've written all the instructions to show you step by step how to put both of these blocks together. But I also wanted to make a video for anybody who's never done half square triangles, or if maybe you needed a refresher on how to put together this block. So follow along with me. Let's make this block, and then you can get my pattern and make a quilt of your very own. Now, I want to say I love how this turned out. It's made with Ruby Star Society fabric. Majority of it is from the line called Juicy, but there are some other prints sprinkled in. I backed it with Minky because I think it makes the cuddliest, comfiest quilts ever. And I used 100% washed wool batting on the inside, so it is extra warm and fluffy and it's just cuddly. I love it. So let's make this block. I'm going to show you how. It's really easy. Even if you've never made a quilt before or you've never made a quilt block, I promise you, you'll get the hang of this. It's really simple. I've got a great technique that I'm going to share with you. And then it's just a matter of sewing all the blocks together. And there's one thing I want to tell you. Do not worry about all of your points matching up perfectly. Mine don't. They don't. And you know what? When I first started thinking about, do I want to be a quilter? I was always so intimidated. And I always thought everything had to be perfect. And then I was somewhere and I was looking at some quilts that were on display, hanging on the wall. And you know what? I looked at those quilts up close. And I got in there and I looked and I thought, those points don't all match up either. There's no good way to make every single point match up perfectly when you're quilting. And you know what? When it's all said and done and you look at it, I mean, does it matter if there's little imperfections? I don't think that it does. So don't feel like your points have to be perfect and that everything has to line up. Because if you look close enough, you'll see that no quilt is 100% perfect. So don't let that scare you. Don't let that intimidate you. Now let's grab some fabric and make some quilt blocks.
To get started, you're going to grab your fabric. Now you're going to need 2 pieces that are solid, 2 pieces that are a darker print, and 2 pieces that are a lighter print. And you're going to lay them out with the dark plus the light, the dark plus the solid, and the light plus the solid. You're going to place those fabrics right sides together so you have 3 different segments. Now what we're going to do is make a grid. So you're going to draw your lines every 3 inches. You're going to do it both horizontally and vertically. Now these are going to be cut lines. When we're all said and done here, you do not sew on these lines. So if it is helpful, you might want to use 2 different color marking pens so you know which lines are your sewing lines and which lines are your cutting lines. Now I promise you it's easy to differentiate between the two. You just do not sew on these first grid lines that you drew. We're going to sew on these diagonal lines that are going to go through all of the boxes that we just created. So these are your sewing lines. So use your straight edge and your pen, and if you want to use a different color, you can totally do that, but you don't have to. Now, you want to make these as straight as they possibly can be here. So I am just kind of readjusting as I go. They're not all perfectly straight. Don't get too hung up on the details. So draw a diagonal line through all of the boxes, even that single one there at the top and at the bottom. And then we're going to take this to the machine and we are going to sew on each side of the line that we're drawing right here. So these are our sewing lines. So you're going to sew 1/4 inch on each side of those diagonal lines. Do not sew along the straight lines that you drew with the original grid. Okay, so just continue to sew along each line. I'm using 1/4 inch presser foot here. So I have the presser foot lined up along the line and then I'm sewing on each side of it. Once you're done sewing on all 3 pieces, you're going to cut this apart. It helps to use a rotating cutting mat if you don't have one. You don't need one, it's okay. Just make sure to keep your fabric together the best you can. So first, we're going to cut through the grid lines that we originally drew. So cut along all of those straight lines. We're going to cut the first 2 here. And then I'm going to spin my rotating cutting mat. If you don't have one, just move your ruler and your rotary cutter to be able to cut along those lines. So first we've cut this grid. And if your fabric wants to move a little bit, just kind of push the pieces back together so everything is lining up. Now what we're going to do is cut the diagonal lines. So you're cutting in between those lines where you stitched with your sewing machine. So you're cutting on the line that you drew, and then each side of that line will have stitching on it. This is what is creating those half square triangles for you. So cut through all of those first, and then you're going to see you have 18 half square triangles doing it this way. It's so much faster than doing 1 or 2 at a time. Now you can take them apart and see that we have 18 half square triangles. All the sewing is on that long edge of each triangle. Now, something to keep in mind, because of the method that we did, some of your triangle points may be sewn closed, but because we didn't do any back stitching, they're easily just going to pull apart. So you're going to want to open all those up and then take them over to your iron, and you're going to press each half square triangle open, and you want to press that seam over to the darker side. Once they've all been pressed open, then you're going to want to do the trimming. And I like to use this block lock ruler. It's got a groove that kind of sits in your seam, and it makes trimming these to the right size so much easier. So use whatever you have. You're going to want each of these to be 2.5 by 2.5 unfinished. So we're trimming off the dog ears and any excess that's on there. So they're perfectly straight and they're all going to be the same size, which is going to be so helpful when it's all said and done, when you're actually putting your squares together. Now, I like to use these design boards to lay out my blocks because I like to sew a bunch up all at once. So first I'm going to lay them out in rows to make sure that I have them going the direction that they need to go. So first I start by making the pinwheel in the center, and then we're adding the points to each of the stars all the way around the edge. So we're just matching them up, and you're just going to go around. And what I like to do is stack like 4 blocks on top of each other. So I'm just going to continue to lay out all of the pieces till all of my points are going the right direction. And then you'll finish by adding the solid squares up in each of the corners. You can see here I have a whole stack of these, and now we're going to take them over to the sewing machine, and I'm going to chain piece these blocks together. So to start, I just go row by row, and I am chain piecing them together, and I'm simply laying them right sides together, and then I'm sewing just one right after another. I'm not taking the time to cut in between each one. You don't need to here. So you'll continue to sew the blocks together to create each row. Once you have created all 4 rows for each block, then you're going to sew the 4 rows together. You want to match up the seams. I like to start in the center seam and work my way out to make sure that all the seams are matching together. And you should be pinning here. I am not, because I've been doing this for a long time, but if you're new to this, pinning helps with accuracy and helps keep things lined up where you want them to be. Since I am not pinning, I always just kind of lift up everything and make sure my seams are still matching as I'm sewing. And then I go along and just continue to sew those rows together until each block is completed. Once you get the hang of it and you get going, these blocks actually come together really quickly. And I know it looks like a lot of small pieces, but really they come together a lot quicker than you might think. So take a look at your block, make sure everything is where you want it to be. Then we're going to go over to the iron and we are going to press. If you would like to spray with a starch or a solution or just water, you can do that. I like to start by pressing all of my seams nice and flat. I like to press them all to one side. That's my personal preference. If you'd rather press your seams open, you can do that too. It's all up to you. You just want your block to lay nice and flat when you go to sew them all together. So repeat this process with all of your blocks. I work in batches. Sometimes I will just make 4 at a time, get them all done and pressed, but you can work on this in whatever way works best for you. Now, some things that I am using that help me get my blocks to lay nice and flat and my seams nice and crisp. I'm pressing on a wool pressing mat. I'm using my Olaso iron. I do use steam, and I am using my quilter's clapper to let the block cool underneath it. And it, does it really make a difference? I think with quilt blocks, it does. I think it helps with crisper, nicer seams, and it keeps your blocks laying nice and flat. Is it a must-have? No, I didn't have one when I first started. So if you don't have one, don't worry about it. Use what you have. It's just fine. And there you go, friends. That's all there is to making a lemon star block.
Well, what'd you think? Was that easier than you thought? Harder than you thought? Now, that's just the method I prefer for making half square triangles. There are many methods out there, and there's not one that is right or wrong. You should do whatever works best and is easiest for you. This is just the method that I prefer. I think it's fast. It helps me get a bunch of blocks done all at one time, which makes a quilt like this whip up really easily. And something I want to let you know, if you want to make this quilt larger or smaller, all you have to do is add or subtract the rows of blocks that you are adding to your quilt. So you can make this as big as you want. You could make it into a baby quilt, just a lap blanket, whatever you want to do. Again, there are no rules. So I hope you will go pick up the pattern and have so much fun making the lemonade twist quilt. And please, when you make it, send me photos, tag me on Instagram, and share them with me because I'd love to see what you make. Be sure to subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. And if you are to the step now where you've got to make some binding, watch this next video. I'm going to show you how to add binding, and this is the way that changed the binding game for me. I used to be completely terrified of binding. I hated it. I avoided any project that required binding because I wasn't good at it. And then I learned this technique, and it's the only way I bind anything and everything now, and it works great. So watch that video for the next step, and I can't wait to see what you make.